I've been looking at teams that have either fallen off the map. Philly's probably waiting for their turn. It's coming. Um, and teams that have risen up out of nowhere. Now I'm looking at mediocrity and Florida's commitment to it. And you know the funny thing is when you look at it season over season, it feels like it's been decades since this team was any good, and yet it really wasn't that long ago that this team made the playoffs. It just feels like it because they were out in the first round. That was the matchup between them and the Islanders, where it was okay, which team's going to win their first playoff round in forever, and the Islanders won it. So Florida this year is mired in the muck. And I wanted to look at the overall numbers and look at how baffling this really truly is, because it is baffling. This year in goals for, they're 14th overall, goals against, they're 28th. Last year, 14th in goals for, 18th in goals against. The year before that, 23rd in goals for, 20th in goals against. The last time they made the playoffs, 2015-2016, they were 6th in goals for and 6th in goals against. So a total turnaround. Started in 2016-2017 when, of course, they fired Gerard Gallant, decided to stand him at the side of the road waiting for a cab rather than, I don't know, be an organization and classy about it. And then they go back to Dale Talon, but it feels like the damage was done in and around that upheaval, and the team hasn't really recovered from it. Now, 2018-2019, where are they now with scoring? I've been looking at this with other teams. I'll look at it here too. Scoring by period. First, they've outscored their opposition 45-39. Second period, they've been outscored 59-56. Still not bad. It's the third period that's horrible. They've been outscored 64-45. Overtime's 4-4. They've been outscored 166-150. So third period, Florida's falling apart this year. Last year, first period, they were outscored 86-82. They were outscored... they outscored their opposition 92-83 in the second, and in the third, 84-83. I got those two backwards. And then overtime, they were outscored 5-3. But they outscored their opposition last year 245-243. And that's where, they were 14th in goals for and 18th in goals against. So Florida was pretty solid last year. Of course, if Florida had been in the West, they would have nudged Colorado out of a playoff spot. And we might not be having this discussion, but we are. 2016-2017, they were outscored in every period. 74-67, 76-70, 76-61. In overtime, however, they outscored the opposition 7-5. Final totals, 205 goals for, 231 goals against. So what's odd about this is that there isn't any really discernible pattern with this other than they're kind of mediocre. Until we get to something I'm going to get to. 2015-2016, so this is when they made the playoffs. They outscored their opposition in every period. 65-50 in the first, 85-65 in the second, 81-79 in the third, except in overtime where they got outscored 6-1. Final scoring, 232 goals for, 200 goals against. So excellent goals against. Their goals for at 232. By current standards, that'd be low, but back then that makes them 6th overall. Now, when you look at their records over the halves, this is where it gets weird. Over the last 3 years since they made the playoffs, the year they made the playoffs, they won 25 games in the first half, lost 12, and then lost 4 in overtime, or shootouts. They were 22-14-5 in the second half. Every year since then, they've won 17 games in the first half. 17-16-8 in 2016-2017, 17-18-6 the year after that, and 17-17-7 the year after that. If you win 17 out of 41 games, you're putting yourself in a position where it's going to be very difficult to make the playoffs. The first year, 18-20-3 was the record in the second half, so it just didn't happen. Last year, of course, they had that amazing second half run, 27-12-2. The problem is this year, they're 3-3-1 so far in the second half of the season. So their record in the second half of the season is already showing signs of being as mediocre as the first half. Now, they've won 3 in a row, and Florida fans are going to point this out, and that's fine. But now they find themselves at 20-20-8. It's just it's a position that makes it very, very difficult to foresee them making the playoffs. You look at this incredible run they had last year, came up short. could not make the playoffs last year. Barely came up short, but they came up short. Now, there's some good things to look at when you look at the moves they've made, though. They added Hoffman and Vetrano, are two examples of key guys on their roster right now who are putting up points and goals. They added them for draft picks. And not first-rounders either. The Hoffman deal with San Jose. San Jose got more out of Florida than Ottawa got out of San Jose. So Hoffman's been a revelation for Florida. Frankie Vetrano, on the other hand, a third-round pick this year. That's a steal for a guy who's got 16 goals this year. Now, in the red, of course, is the fact they traded Riley Smith and they exposed Jonathan Huberdeau. They wanted to get rid of Smith's contract, so they made Huberdeau available. And, of course, that's a big part of the reason that Vegas had a pretty solid season in 2017-2018. So that's a negative, but if not for losing Smith and Huberdeau, do you bring in Hoffman? So maybe not. And prior to that, they added Keith Yandel for draft picks. Just draft picks. And Yandel's an all-star. So there have been good things done with this roster. There have been solid moves made. Now, the draft table, I really couldn't find a problem. They draft Owen Tippett, number 10 in 2017. There hasn't a big steal after that that's making them regret that. Henrik Borgstrom in 2016. He looks pretty good in his early returns for Florida. 2015, they drafted Lawson Krause. Now, Krause was traded to Arizona with the Bolin contract. Krause, who's put up decent numbers for Arizona. I think he's up to 8 goals right now. Not a guy that Florida's going to look back and say, oh, if we'd kept him. And in that same draft at 102, they drafted Dennis Melgan. Melgan's already played some games. So for a draft pick outside of the top 100, not bad. So no big steals for them, but no big fumbles yet. Owen Tippett yet to stick and keep his job at the NHL level. But it's not a big deal yet. Now, cap space, they're currently at $8 million. So if you're looking and saying, well, could Florida upgrade? The answer is yes, absolutely. But what are the odds of them giving that a shot this year? They're basically zero. Now, the interesting thing to me is, too, if the cap does go up to $83 million, and with some of the money coming off that's coming off, they'll have roughly $20 million in cap space next year. So they're in pretty good shape there. Vetrano's a restricted free agent with arbitration rights. Melgan's an RFA as well. Kiselevich is a UFA, but none of these guys are going to expect huge raises. Vetrano will expect a raise. I could see him being a $3.5 million a year player if he ends up getting 20-25 goals. But I could see him being at 2.5 as well. This is Florida. It's where that whole tax thing comes in, right? Lower taxes, so players play for less. Now, the glaring issue for Florida, and I think a big part of this mediocrity they've been going through is that elephant in the room, the elephant of a contract, Roberto Luongo, who said, my contract sucks when he was in Vancouver, and they couldn't trade him. And he goes through the trade deadline, he's still a Canuck, and he says, my contract sucks. Kind of does. He is signed until 2022 because the contract sucks. James Reimer is signed until 2021. And Reimer and Luongo, let's be honest, 28th in goals against right now. 2017, their goaltending was 20th. 18th in 2018. You're not very likely to make the playoffs with a team that's scoring middle of the road if your goals against is high. I think that Florida's depth on the blue line has been a problem at times. Their scoring really isn't. I've been saying that even in previews and review videos this year for Florida. Their scoring isn't a problem. I don't look at guys like Barkov, Huberdeau, Hoffman, and Vetrano now especially too. I don't look at any of them and say, well, if these guys would get on the board, if Dadonov would get some more points, because that's not the problem. The problem's been keeping the puck out of the net. Now, if you think that this duo is good enough, we differ. But if you think this duo is good enough, then it has to be the blue line in front of them, allowing too many prime opportunities. And I think there's some of that as well. And the problem I have is that you look at their depth, And Montembeault is a 22-year-old goalie that shows as number 3 on their depth chart. They don't really have anybody to replace them with. They need to talk to a Pittsburgh about a Tristan Jarry. They need to talk to somebody who has a good young goalie that they can pick up. I look at what Winnipeg did last year in the offseason. They pick up Laurent Brossoit for $650,000. Pennies. And he's putting up tremendous statistics. So it can be done. It's tricky. The really good GMs are doing it. But for this team, you've got a good core. This team can score goals. Their problem is when you're allowing 19 more goals in the third and you're scoring, that's an issue. And some of it may be coaching. Some of it may very well be the goaltenders that are in there. It may be defense. And it may just be a team that's fragile when it comes to its confidence. I don't think this can be fixed this season. I think it's too late. I think 48 games in, you got 34 games left. I don't think there's a way to salvage this and for Florida to make the playoffs. So the question then becomes, do you do a big sell at the deadline? And who do you sell? Like I've said, this is it. There's no big names up for unrestricted free agency. They're a young team in Florida. I guess you could sell Brouwer, I guess, but Brouwer's unrestricted free agent this summer. He's only making $850K with Florida. It's not like he's weighing them down. I look at Florida. They've got a solid team, but you know there is that something lacking on the blue line. There's that something lacking when it comes to that starter who's got that 915, 920 save percentage. And do you try to solve that at the trade deadline, or do you wait till the offseason? And who do you sell? So that's a big part of my question when it comes to Florida. Is if you're gonna, if your argument is, well, they'll sell. Let me just take a quick look through their scorers as it stands right now. Huberdeau 25, Barkov's 23, Hoffman's 29, Dadonov's 29, Yandel's 32. Any of them being sold? No. Ekblad's 22, Vetrano's 24, McCann's 22, Trocheck's 25. Trocheck, since he came back, has shown tremendous ability. Matheson's 24, Bukestad's 26, Sevier's 29. I guess you could sell Sevier, I guess, but I mean with 3 goals, not gonna be a big market for him. Malgin is 22, Brouwer 33, Kiselevich is 31. And I mean, I guess you could, or he's 28. Sorry, he's played 31 games. He's 28. Borgstrom is 21. Uyghur's 25. Lamico is 23. Pisic's 27. I guess you could sell him. He's played 37 games. Haley's 32, I guess, with Haley. But again, he's a tough guy. What are you going to get back? Harluck's 23. McDonald, who's played 2 games, he's 25. Hunt, 23. And then you get down to Luongo at 39. They've still got Alex Petrovic on here. He's, of course, 26 and gone. McKenzie's 37. He's only played 1 game this year. Weidman, who they just added, is 29. Like, that's the thing for me. I don't see anything to sell. I don't see anybody on this team that I say, yep, they'll move that guy out. So they're in this unusual position where it's a pretty solid team, but it seems like that goaltending's an issue, and they might be wasting some prime years with some really good young players. I'd be interested to know, Florida fans, what do you do? Do you get rid of any of these guys? Do you try to get more draft picks? And the goaltending, that elephant in the room, the goaltending. How does that get fixed? Because they've got both of these guys for a while longer under contract. Does anybody take Reimer's contract? Nobody's taking Luongo's because his contract sucks, right? The only team that might take it would be if Luongo at the end of this year says, I'm done, I'm not going to play anymore, that a deal would be worked where he'd go back to Vancouver, his rights would go to Vancouver, knowing darn full well he's never going to play again, and find a medical reason to put him on LTIR and just keep him there, like a Boland, like Datsuk, like Zetterberg, all these guys just, throw him on the LTIR. Hosa's another one. He'd never play again, but, just beyond that agreement, and because the contract stinks and you don't want to pay the cap recapture, yeah, it'd be interesting to see. And if Vancouver was in the market for that, if Demko's the real deal, maybe a deal could be worked where Michael DiPietro would be part of a package that might help. But DiPietro is still a couple years out, in all likelihood, from competing for an NHL job. But it would be at least a goaltending prospect for Florida that projects to be a pretty decent goaltender. I'm just throwing that out there as an example. Are they going to be looking in that direction? What are they going to do? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And an important question, is Dale Talon's job safe? While we're all talking about all these GMs and what a crappy job they're doing, with this trend for the Florida Panthers, should their general manager feel safe, or should he be in the hot seat? Let me know your thoughts as always. Hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just tap it upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.